Start para. Both these appeal challenge two different judgments and decrees dated 21/12/2005 in regular civil appeal numbers 393/1993 and 498/2000, whereby, the learned additional district judge, Nagpur, reversed the judgment and decree passed by the trial court in special civil suit number 264/1987 and 265/1987 and granted the decrees of specific performance of contract. In both the appeals, the parties are same and the issues as well as the contentions raised are one and the same. There were two separate agreements to sell for two separate properties between the same parties, and therefore two separate suits were filed. Hence, these two appeals are being disposed of analogously by a common judgment. Full stop. Para. The brief facts necessary to dispose of these appeals are as under. Respondent number 1, claiming to be the tenant of deceased Narayan Talreja, the original defendant filed two separate suits with identical facts and identical reliefs, alleging that deceased, who was the owner of the suit property and landlord to respondent number 1, agreed to sell the eastern portion of the suit property for a consideration of rupees 60,000 by accepting an earnest amount of rupees 10,000 in cash, whereas the sale deed was agreed to be executed and registered within 4 months by accepting the balance amount of rupees 50,000. On the same day, another agreement to sell were entered into for selling the western portion of the suit property for a consideration of rupees 35,000 and an amount of rupees 3,000 towards earnest money was accepted. It is also alleged that as per the agreements to sell dated 19/12/1985, deceased was to obtain a no objection certificate from Nagpur Improvement Trust (NIT) and other authorities at his expense. Since deceased failed to obtain the NOC from NIT and other authorities, therefore the respondent issued a notice dated 17/4/1986 to deceased to execute the sale deed. In reply, deceased denied the execution of the agreement and informed that he sold the property to his daughter, the appellant herein. Both the suits came to be filed by respondent number 1 for specific performance of the contract dated 19/12/1985 against deceased and the present appellant, the subsequent purchaser. After filing of the suits, deceased died. Full stop. Para. The appellant filed written statement denying the execution of the agreement to sell by her father as well as receipt of the consideration as alleged in the plaint, inter alia contending that deceased was living alone in the suit house during his last days and was an ailing person with many infirmities and weak eyesight. Taking advantage of this condition, the respondent, who belonged to the same biradari (caste), obtained the signature of deceased on blank stamp papers. Out of that, 2 stamp papers were used in the agreement to sell in these suits. Even in the reply, deceased has sought return of those stamp papers. The learned trial court, after framing necessary issues and recording common evidence in both the suits, dismissed the prayer of the respondent for specific contract. However, the trial court directed the appellant to refund the amount of rupees 13,000 which was due against deceased. Stop.